right, Your Majesties, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for always returning. Thank you to all of you for your support. Today we are going to listen to Dr. Arikana being interviewed and sharing her own view on why the recent coups in the continent of Africa. And she summarized, we are going to listen to her soon. She summarized all these in just some words, that Africa just want to be left alone to control her resources. Like, this is it. This is the agitation. Just let us be. Let's control what we have. We can be stupid with what we have, no problem, but just let us be. Let us be. This is the outcry of the continent. Now, there have been 7 coups within 3 years, like 7 military takeovers within 3 years. And I kid you not, it has not ended, because there is more coming. And because we are seeing this right now from the francophone dominated countries, all right? All right, we are seeing this right now from the francophone countries. It is gradually and moving quietly into the anglophone angle, because these people work hand in hand. Now, that of the French became so pronounced. Countries that the French is dominant became so pronounced because this very Macron, he thinks he's, I don't know which word to qualify him with, Your Majesties. There were things they were doing that obviously it shows. If not because these countries were little countries, you know, of course, this is even what was in their mind. They felt the countries were so small that they might not have that mind to just decide to want to pull out from the hold of colonialism. Now, this is what French do. Like, they have control over the military. They have control over their natural resources. They have controls over their finances. Like, when you have control over these things, you're the one in charge. You just keep people there. They're just images. You just keep them there. But you're the one controlling everything that happens in the country. And this is what is leading to a lot of agitations, because there is no infrastructure for the people. You only come to steal out their resources and go away. Like, this is it, Your Majesties. And she had a lot to say.
Hi, I'm Steve Clements, and I have a couple of questions. What's driving the string of military coups in Africa? And what does it mean for Western policy across the continent? Let's get to the bottom line. 7. That's the number of countries in Africa where people woke up one day to find that their president was ousted and that their military had taken over. And that's just since 2020, just in the last 3 years. We're talking about Mali, Chad, Guinea, Sudan, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Gabon. Since most of the coups are in former French colonies, France has had the biggest wake-up call of all Western powers. But the wheels are turning in Washington as well, especially since Russia and China are also big players in the region. So what do the changes across the continent mean for the people in Africa and for relations between Africa and the West? What note should Washington be taking? Today we're talking with Arikana Chihombori-Quao, the former ambassador of the African Union to the United States. Ambassador, it's such a pleasure to be with you again. I've always enjoyed our conversations and learned from them. And I just want to ask you, in the West, when you look at these countries, Mali, Chad, Guinea, Sudan, Burkina Faso, Gabon, Niger, the West looks at this like maybe there's a problem going on here. How do you look at it?
There is a serious problem for the West, for sure. I think the West did not see it coming. However, it was very naive of the Western nations to think that the exploitation of Africa was going to continue unabated forever. The West is definitely, if I may use a 4-letter word, not so kind, they may be pissing in their pants, because what's happening in Africa is indeed a revolution, and a revolution that's way past due.
So you see it as a revolution, but what kind of revolution is it, in the sense that do you think this is throwing off repression from France, from the United States, from other nations? What kind of revolution do you see is underway?
Well, I like to think, if I were to use the biblical terms, this is a revelation among Black people. They're waking up and realizing that what has been happening is wrong, and change must come. And for true change to come, it must be brought by the people. What you are seeing is an African electorate that is now awoken, that is informed. They understand the real issues. In the past, Africans have been misinformed, misled, and given false information, and being thrown a shiny object and being told only the African heads of states are the problem. But now they understand the invisible hand and the role that the invisible hand is playing to make sure that Africa remains where they want Africa to be. The African heads of states, particularly those heads of states of the former French colonies, majority of them were just puppets put in place to continue the same French legacy, which basically boxed them in, where it said you have no control of your military, you have no control of your natural resources, you have no control of your finances, and if you continue from those three areas, you are free to rule your country any which way you want. What power does that president have? And in the past, any president that has tried to back the system and do something about taking control of the financial resources, and I'm talking about African countries depositing their bank reserves with France. I'm talking about African countries giving up their natural resources, no value addition, France having first right of refusal for all the natural resources discovered yet to be discovered, France companies having first right of refusal for all contracts, large, small, private, public, France having military presence in those countries, and France having the ability to invade them in the event that they feel their interests are being violated. France making sure that those countries can only be trained by France, the military can only be trained by France. The military equipment can only be bought from France. Come on now. Our people didn't understand all this. So we can change African heads of states in those former French colonies like we change clothes. If those fundamentals are not addressed, nothing is going to change. The Africans now understand where the real problem is. The real problem, like I've always said, the biggest risk to peace and security in Africa is France. Let's make no mistake about that. We have other former colonizers. Yes, they still have a stronghold in Africa through their multinational companies that continue to siphon billions out of Africa every year. We are aware of that. But the biggest problem when it comes to former French colonies is France. Its roots are so entrenched in those countries, and now France is trying to expand into other nations. Until we address those agreements African countries were forced to sign, nothing, and I mean nothing we do, is going to bring us the true economic liberation, which is what Africa needs, which is what Africa was denied when African countries were being given their independence. We are now dealing with an African electorate that understand what is really going on in Africa.
Well, let me ask you, Ambassador, let's take Niger for a moment. President Mohamed Bazoum is a popular president in the West. You know, the IMF liked him, the World Bank liked him, the United States liked him, France seemed to like him. I would like our listeners to understand the gap in the popularity of someone like President Bazoum and performance, and what is going on that makes that revolution, that coup as we see it in Niger, a different story than we're seeing.
The performance that you're talking about is the performance of what Nigerian minerals are doing to French education, to French healthcare, to French infrastructure. You tell me, why is it that 95% of Nigerian uranium is powering over 30% of France, while over 70% of Nigerians have no electricity? How is that okay? How is even President Bazoum proud of himself with that fact? There is no development in Niamey. I was in Niamey a few years ago when we had the AU summit. It was pitiful to see the level of underdevelopment that Niger has. There is no development in Niger. Let's make no mistake about it. Niger is the second poorest country in Africa, in the world, in fact. So how can President Bazoum be proud of himself? What development is he talking about? You're talking about developing France? There is no development in Niger. One of the poorest countries on earth. And of course, IMF would love them. World Bank would love them. France would love him. because he is allowing the pilferage, the exploitation to continue. And that's why the people are rising up to say, if you can't stand up to the bullies and tell them that the exploitation can no longer continue, and look President Macron in the face and say, President Macron, how is it okay that my money, my bank reserves, my natural resources are funding French education, are funding French healthcare, are funding French infrastructure? How is that okay, President Macron? Answer us. Africans in Niger, they want to know. So when you tell me that he is favored by the West, it makes sense. But he's definitely not favored by the people, because there is no development. Let's be serious here. Let's stop pushing lies about what's happening. They know the exploitation is happening. It's happening in Niger. It's happening in Burkina Faso. It's happening in Mali. It's happening in every African country. Let's make no mistake about this. We're sick and tired of giving up our lands to Western nations. African children, they need to eat too. African children need to go to school. African children need good healthcare systems. Behind all that abuse, we need to let the Western world know that there are millions of African children who are going hungry, millions of African children who are dying, millions of women, African women who are dying giving birth to another life, millions of African youth who are unemployed, all because the Western world is continuing with the agenda of exploitation, and exploitation of the African continent. That era is over. And we're coming together as Africans and saying, enough is enough. This has got to stop.
Your Majesties, and this is what I say about this woman, because she got the fire, and I love the fire she have in her when it comes to the motherland, the continent of Africa. This is our home. This is our only inheritance. If we do not fight for our rights, if we do not fight for the betterment of the continent, what else should we be doing, Your Majesties? Because for some who feel, oh, we talk about Africa too much, let's talk about other things. What are other things when this is our inheritance, this is our home, this is our last hope? When we do not have this place, we have nowhere. If you are those of African descent, if you're a melanated person, this is the only home that you can have and be peaceful. That is Africa. So we have to fight for the freedom of the motherland, so that there will be freedom for all those of African descent around the world. When Africans are not respected, no one will respect you out there. When Africa is not free, we are all not free. And this is the truth. But when we are free, Africa is prosperous and great again. I tell you, before they talk to you anyhow out there, they're going to think twice, because they know very well that you have people to back you up, that you have a home to go to. But when they come here and destroy the continent and give you reasons why you shouldn't have any reason to know anything about the continent, they come to you and frustrate you at the end, because they know you have nowhere to run to. You have no people out there somewhere who can back you up. And this is why we have to fight for what we have. What do you think, Your Majesties? Leave your comments and thought there at the section, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, love yourself, love others, stay safe, stay positive, always, Your Majesties. Bye for now.